Okay, so 4.7, we're going to learn about the quadratic formula. So to help us solve quadratic equations, with just a reminder, a quadratic equation is anything with an x squared and an x and a number. We use the quadratic formula. So for our quadratic formula, we're plugging in a, b, and c. So a comes from the number in front of the x squared, b is the number in front of the x, and c is just the number with no x's on it. And we plug it into this formula here. So it's negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac over 2a. Last year they had to memorize this formula, but you guys get notes on your test and quiz, so you'll have it in front of you. So you don't even have to memorize it. All you have to do is plug in and simplify. Alright, so this brings us to our first example. Again, our quadratic formula is negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac over 2a. So let's figure out what our a is, what our b is, and what our c is. And just like before, anytime we're solving these equations, we have to have it equal to 0. So here, it's already equal to 0. We don't have to shuffle anything around before we start. So what is our a? What number do we have in front of the x squared? What number is in front here? 1. Since we have an x squared, but there's no number in front, that would be 1. What's the number in front of the x? What would our b? Negative 5. Perfect. So the sign stays with it, so it would be negative 5. And then what about c? Negative 7. So now we plug our a, b, and c into our equation. So we have negative 5 plus or minus the square root of negative 5 squared minus 4 times a, so 4 times 1 times c, which is negative 7, over 2 times 1. Now we simplify. So what do we do to this negative 5 out front? It becomes a positive 5. So positive 5 plus or minus. Let's simplify everything under our square root. So what's negative 5 squared? 25 minus, what's 4 times 1 times negative 7? So 4 times 1 would be 4. What's 4 times 7? 4 times 7. 28. 4 times 1. 4 times 7. 4 times 1 was 4. 4 times 7, 28. And it would become a plus because we have a negative 4. So a negative and a negative becomes a plus. So this would be plus 27. And what's 2 times 1? 2. 28. I'm sorry. Now we can simplify under our square root a little bit more. So we have 5 plus or minus. What's 25 plus 28? 53 over 2. That's our answer. So we use the... Right, we just leave this as the answer. We use the quadratic formula because we don't have two factors of -7 that add to -5. So we can't factor like we did before. So to find what answer solves this equation, what we get for x as our answer, we have to use the quadratic formula. So x is equal to this whole thing. So it's actually not a whole number that we get when we solve this equation. It's 5 plus or minus the square root of 53 over 2. Which you can use the quadratic formula every single time you have a quadratic equation. So anytime you have an x squared plus an x plus a number, you can use the quadratic formula. Sometimes it'll simplify and give you a whole number, which means you could have just factored, but you could always use the quadratic formula. Any questions on this one? All right, let's do it again. So we have equal to 0, so we can just go ahead and plug it into our formula. So we have negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac over 2a. So on your homework, just make sure you write your formula, and all you have to do is plug it in. What's our a? 1. What's our b? And what's our c? 9. So we plug everything in. We have negative 6 plus or minus the square root of 6 squared minus 4 times 1 times 9 over 2 times 1. Now let's simplify. Got negative 6 out front, plus or minus. What's 6 squared? 36. And then that would be minus, what is 4 times 1 times 9? 36. And then what's 2 times 1? 2. We can simplify under our square root a little bit more. So what is 36 minus 36? 0. So this would be the square root of 0. What's the square root of 0? 0. So we actually have negative 6 plus or minus 0. So do we have to write like 6 plus 0? What would negative 6 plus 0 be? Just negative 6. We don't even have to write this if it's 0. So we have negative 6 over 2. And how can we simplify negative 6 over 2? Negative 3. So x is equal to negative 3. What do we have to do first here? Do we have equal to 0? No. So how do we get it equal to 0? Subtract 4. So we have 2x squared minus x minus 4 is equal to 0. Now we can figure out what our a, b, and c are. And we can plug it into our formula. So I'll write the formula over here again. Negative b plus or minus the square root b squared minus 4ac over 2a. So what's our a? 2. What's our b? Negative 1. And what's our c? Negative 4. So we plug that all in. We have negative 1 plus or minus the square root of negative 1 squared minus 4 times 2 times negative 4 over 2 times 2. So what happens to this negative 1 out front? Becomes a positive 1. So positive 1 plus or minus the square root. What's negative 1 squared? 1. And then we have negative 4 times 2. What's negative 4 times 2? Negative 8. So then what's negative 8 times negative 4? 32. So plus 32 over, what's 2 times 2? 4. Got to simplify a little bit more. So 1 plus or minus Can we simplify under the square root? What's 1 plus 32? It's a positive 32. 33 over 4. So that is our answer. So x is equal to 1 plus or minus the square root of 33 over 4. We have equal to 0, so we can go ahead and solve. So what's our a? 3. What's our b? -4. What's our c? 3. So we plug it into our formula. Our formula is, again, negative b plus or minus square root of b squared minus 4ac over 2a. So let's plug it all in. We have a negative, -4, plus or minus the square root of b squared, so -4 squared minus 4 times a, which is 3, times c, which is 3, over 2 times a, which is 3. Let's simplify. What do we do with that -4 out front? Becomes a +4, plus or minus. What is -4 squared? 16. And then what's -4 times 3? -12. And what is -12 times 3? -36. So this would be minus 36 over, what's 2 times 3? 6. So this would be 4 plus or minus. What is 16 minus 36? What's bigger, the 16 or the 36? So -20, perfect, over 6. So x is equal to this. So the next thing we're going to be learning about today is called the discriminant. The discriminant comes from just what's under the square root, so that b squared minus 4ac. So just under the square root, not including the square root. So everything under it. That's called our discriminant. On the next page, we'll go over what the discriminant tells us. So right now we are only looking at that b squared minus 4ac, what's under the square root. And we use like the same a, b, and c that we were using before. So if our discriminant is a positive number, if it's greater than 0, we get a positive, we have two real solutions. Two real solutions. If our discriminant is equal to 0, we have one real solution. And if it's less than 0, meaning that it is negative, we have no real solutions. So these are the three cases that we will see. If we plug in for our discriminant and get a positive number, we'll have two real solutions. If we get 0, we have one real solution. If we get a negative number, we have no real solutions. So we're just going to use this little discriminant formula for the next few examples. So we need to find the discriminant and determine the number of real solutions. So our discriminant formula was b squared minus 4ac. What's our a? -1. What's our b? 2. And what's our c? -9. So we plug it into our formula. We have 2 squared minus 4 times a, so 4 times negative 1, times negative 9. What is 2 squared? 4. And then we have a negative 4 times negative 1. What does that give us? Negative 4 times negative 1. Positive 4. And then positive 4 times negative 9. Negative 36. So negative 36. What is 4 minus 36? Negative 32. So negative 32 is our discriminant. If it's negative, how many solutions do we have? No real solutions. Yes. So before we were just plugging it into our quadratic formula. These you just have to find the discriminant and the number of solutions. So the homework is split up into 2 parts. You have to plug it into the quadratic formula and find the discriminant and the number of solutions. So it's like 2 separate things that we did today. Next one. Just like before, we need it to be equal to 0. So it's equal to 0. We can go ahead and start. What's our A? What's our B? And what's our C? Negative 2. Negative 3. 5. So our discriminant formula is b squared minus 4ac. You just have to plug everything in. So b squared would be negative 3 squared minus 4 times a, so times negative 2, times 5. What's negative 3 squared? Negative times a negative would be positive 9. And then what's negative 4 times negative 2? Positive 8. And what's positive 8 times 5? 40. So this would be a positive 40. So what's 9 plus 40? 49. So 49 is our discriminant. And how many solutions do we have? Awesome. Since this is positive, we have 2 real solutions. Yes, because the question asks us, what is the number of real solutions? So the question asks us for this part, 2 real solutions. Any questions on this one? Two real solutions. Alright, last one. We have to find the discriminant and determine the number of real solutions. So it's equal to 0. We can go ahead and start. What's our A? 1. What's our B? Negative 6. And what's our C? 9. So we're plugging this into b squared minus 4ac. So b would be negative 6 squared minus 4 times a, which is 1, times c, which is 9. What is negative 6 squared? 36. And then what's negative 4 times 1? Negative 4. And negative 4 times 9? Negative 36. What's 36 minus 36? 0. So 0 is our discriminant, and how many solutions do we have? 1 real solution.